If you had told me last week that a small piece of paper from a gas station would rip my whole life open, I would have laughed. Not the bitter, fake laugh I'd learned from years of surviving my mother-in-law, but a real belly laugh. The kind I forgot I even had. Because last week I was just Kendra Miller, 32, living in a modest condo in Charlotte, working as a receptionist at a dental clinic, married to a man who looked perfect on paper and felt like a stranger in the dark. That morning started like any other. My alarm went off at 6:15. The same annoying beeping that made me want to throw it every day. I rolled over and reached across the bed. His side was empty. Again. Early meeting, I whispered to myself, repeating the excuse he texted me almost every morning now. I stared at his pillow for a second, inhaling the faint smell of his cologne that still clung to the fabric. Once, that smell comforted me. Now, it just made my stomach twist. I pushed the blanket off and swung my legs over the side of the bed, feeling that familiar dull ache in my chest that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with disappointment. "Mama," a small voice called from down the hall. "I'm up, baby," I called back, forcing warmth into my voice. My son, Micah, toddled into the room with his stuffed dinosaur dragging on the floor. He was 3. All big brown eyes and wild curls, the only person in the world who made me feel like I was enough just by breathing. "Daddy gone?" he asked, looking at the empty side of the bed. "Yeah," I said, smoothing his hair. "Daddy had to go to work early today." He frowned a little in that way kids do when something doesn't feel right but they don't have words for it. I kissed his forehead. "We'll see him later, okay?" Later. I had no idea how loaded that word would feel by the end of the day. The lottery ticket was still stuck to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a smiling tooth, one of those free clinic giveaways. I'd bought it on a whim 2 nights before at the gas station, half as a joke after my shift. The clerk had said, "You never know, sweetheart," and I'd laughed and said, "With my luck? Please." I only checked it that morning because the TV in the kitchen was still tuned to the local news, and the winning numbers flashed on the screen while I was pouring Micah's cereal. "Wait," I whispered, my hand still hovering with the milk carton. Wait. The numbers didn't look real. They looked like someone else's life. I set the milk down too hard, and it sloshed over the edge of the bowl. Micah squealed, but I barely heard him. I walked to the fridge in slow motion, my heart thudding in my ears. I pulled the ticket off the magnet, my fingers shaking so hard the thin paper crinkled. 34, 12, 19, 46, 9, and Powerball 14, the announcer said cheerfully. I stared at my ticket. 34, 12, 19, 46,
9,
14. My knees almost gave out. "No way," I whispered.
No.
No way. "Mama?" Micah's voice pulled me back. "You okay?" I blinked, realizing I'd been holding my breath. I forced myself to sit down at the table so I wouldn't collapse onto the floor. "Yeah, baby," I said, my voice shaking. Mama's okay. Mama's just..." I laughed. It burst out of me, wild and hysterical and shocked. I clapped a hand over my mouth, tears springing into my eyes. "What's funny?" Micah grinned, laughing with me because my emotions were contagious to him. "Nothing," I said, crying and laughing at the same time. "Everything. Oh my God. $50 million. After taxes, still life-changing. Generational." My first instinct wasn't to call a lawyer or the lottery office or even my mom. My first instinct was to call my husband, Aaron. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and dialed his number. It rang and rang. No answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. "Hey, it's Aaron. Leave a message." I swallowed. "Hey," I said, my voice breathless. Just call me back as soon as you can, okay? It's important. Really important." I hung up and stared at the screen. Nothing. No dots, no call back. I told myself he's in a meeting. He's busy. He's always busy. A part of me whispered, "Busy with what?" But I shoved that voice down. I looked at Micah, who was now happily chewing his cereal, milk on his chin. "Do you want to go see Daddy?" I asked suddenly. He lit up.
Yes.
Daddy office. Okay, I said, standing so fast my chair scraped the floor. Let's go surprise him. I called in sick to the clinic, something I almost never did. My boss sounded genuinely concerned, which made me feel a little guilty. If all went well, I'd never have to answer that phone again. On the way to Aaron's office downtown, I kept touching my bag. The ticket was in there, tucked next to the printed email from the lottery commission confirming I had the winning number and giving basic instructions. They advised me not to tell anyone, to sign the back, to contact their office quietly. Be cautious. Protect yourself. I'd signed it. I'd read the words protect yourself 3 times. And still, my heart was screaming to share the moment with my husband. The man I thought I'd grow old with. The man who used to bring me gas station coffee when I was pregnant, who held my hair while I threw up from morning sickness, who once told me, "We're a team, okay?" Always. We hit traffic, and Micah fell asleep in his car seat, his thumb in his mouth. I used the time to replay our last few months in my head. The late nights. The extra cologne. The new passwords on his phone. The way his mother, Evelyn, had started making little comments about money. You know, Kendra, she'd said at dinner last week, her fork clinking against her wine glass. You and Aaron should really think about consolidating everything. Joint accounts, joint property. It's safer for the family. For the family, I'd repeated, forcing a smile. She'd smiled back, a tight, condescending curve of her lips. You never know what could happen. Better to protect what's his. I mean, what's yours? Together. Aaron had just stared at his plate, not defending me, not saying a word. I shook the memory off as the light turned green. Today was different. Today, money meant power, security, a chance to finally not feel small. When we arrived at his office building, I parked in the visitor lot. It was one of those glass towers that make you feel like an ant staring up at a crystal hive. I unbuckled Micah, who was groggy but excited when I said, "We're going to surprise Daddy." We walked through the sliding doors, my flats clicking on the polished floor. People in suits rushed past us, eyes on their phones, their lives. I held Micah's hand tighter and forced myself not to turn around and go home. At the reception desk, a young man looked up. "Can I help you?" "Yes," I said, adjusting my bag on my shoulder. "I'm here to see Aaron Miller. I'm his wife." Recognition flickered in his eyes. "Oh, hey. Yeah, he's in his office. He picked up the phone. "Hey, Aaron, your wife and kid are here to see you." "Oh, okay. I'll let her know." He hung up and gave me a polite smile. "He's on a call, but he said you can go right up. You know the way?" "Yes," I said, my heartbeat skipping. "Thank you." I pressed the elevator button, my palms sweaty, and we rode up to the 8th floor. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like a stranger, pale, eyes too bright, lips pressed together to keep from saying everything swirling in my head. $50 million. We could pay off the condo. We could move, travel, invest. I could quit my job. I could finally say no to Evelyn without worrying she'd cut us off from whatever little financial help she occasionally dangled over our heads like a toy. "You excited to see Daddy?" I asked Micah. "Yes," he bounced, his dinosaur tucked under his arm. Daddy hugged me. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened. We stepped into the quiet hallway. I knew exactly where Aaron's office was. I'd brought him lunch here a few times in the early years, when he still texted me, "Miss you." Now, as we walked down the corridor, I heard his voice before I saw his door. He was laughing. I slowed down. The sound was wrong. It was lighter, almost flirty. A laugh I hadn't heard in a long time, and never in my direction. "Sure, baby," I whispered to Micah, who looked up at me confused. We reached his office. The door was mostly closed, just a sliver of light spilling out from the crack. I was about to knock when I heard a woman's voice. "You're terrible," she giggled. "What if she finds out?" My heart stopped. "She won't," Aaron said, and my blood turned to ice. I froze, my knuckles hovering inches from the wood. Micah tugged on my hand, but I barely felt it. She's not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer, he continued, his tone dripping with a cruel amusement I'd never heard pointed at me, but probably always existed. She still thinks we're struggling. Once the money hits, I'll make sure it's all under my name. I clutched my bag unconsciously, my fingers pressing into the lottery ticket inside. The woman laughed again, a breathy, intimate sound. And then what? You'll finally divorce her. My chest constricted, so hard I thought I might pass out. My ears were ringing, but I forced myself to keep listening, every word carving into my skin. Of course, Aaron said casually. I'm not going to stay married to her forever. Once everything is transferred and my mom helps with the paperwork, Kendra can cry all she wants. She has no idea how this stuff works. She'll walk away with nothing. And I'll have you. Micah shifted closer to me, sensing something was wrong. My vision blurred with tears, but I didn't make a sound. The woman's voice softened. You really think she'll just sign everything? She always does, he replied. She trusts me. That's the joke. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She's convenient. For now. Silence roared in my ears. My heart shattered, and then went very, very still. Convenient. A joke. Sign whatever I put in front of her. I stared at the thin line of light under his door, feeling something inside me quietly break and then harden into something else. Something colder. Sharper. My first instinct was to burst in, to scream, to throw the door open and wave the ticket in his face and ask, "How could you?" But the words from the lottery email flashed in my mind. Protect yourself. For the first time in my life, I obeyed a voice that wasn't my husband's or his mother's. I obeyed my own. I took one silent step back from the door, pulling Micah with me. "Mommy," he whispered. "We not see Daddy?" My throat burned. "Not right now, baby," I murmured, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Daddy's busy." As we turned to leave, Erin's muffled voice floated through the door one last time. "By the time she realizes what happened," he said, chuckling, "it'll be too late." I walked back down that hallway on shaky legs, my son's small hand in mine, my heart no longer pounding in panic, but beating with a slow, cold clarity. Too late for who? I pressed the elevator button and stared at my reflection in the shiny doors. My eyes were still wet, but something in them had changed. There was pain, yes, but underneath the pain, there was something else. Resolve. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was convenient. He thought I would sign anything. He had no idea who he had just created. As the elevator door slid open, a single thought crystallized in my mind, sharp and deadly. You're right, Aaron. By the time someone realizes what happened, it will be too late. But it won't be me. When I walked out of that building, the sunlight felt wrong. Too bright. Too cheerful. Cars moved. People rushed by. The world kept going like nothing had happened. Like my husband hadn't just called me stupid through a door, he didn't know I was standing behind. "Mommy juice?" Micah tugged at my sleeve as we reached the car, his tiny voice pulling me back into my body. "Yeah, baby," I whispered, buckling him into his seat with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. "We'll get juice." I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel, my fingers leaving small damp prints on the leather. I could still hear Erin's voice echoing in my head. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She's convenient. Convenient. I closed my eyes and let a single tear slide down my cheek before wiping it away. "Okay," I whispered to myself. "Okay. No more crying in parking lots, Kendra. Not today." Because I had $50 million, a husband who wanted to rob me blind, a mother-in-law who treated me like a placeholder, and a 3-year-old in the back seat who needed a mother with a spine, not a doormat. And for the first time in my marriage, I had something Aaron didn't know about. I drove to a little drive-thru, bought Micah his juice and fries, and a coffee I knew my stomach couldn't handle, but ordered anyway just to have something warm to hold. The cashier called me Han, like my world wasn't collapsing. By the time we reached home, the shock inside me had twisted into something harder. Determination. The condo looked the same as always, the shoes by the couch, the jacket Aaron left on the chair, the wedding photos and sonogram prints on the wall, but now everything felt like evidence. Micah rushed to his toys, shouting, "Dino time," while I sat at the kitchen table, pulled out the lottery ticket, the email printout, and the notebook where I usually wrote grocery lists. This time, I wrote something different. What I know. Aaron is cheating. Aaron and some woman are planning to take the money and divorce me. His mother is involved. They think I'm stupid enough to sign anything. They don't know I heard them. Seeing it on paper made it real, but also made it smaller, something I could deal with. My phone buzzed. A text from him. "Busy. What's so urgent?" I typed back calmly, "Me. Nothing urgent. Just wanted to say hi. We're fine. Talk later." I knew if he sensed suspicion, he would shift his strategy. Better to let him believe I was clueless. He replied instantly. "Don't stress me when I'm working, Kendra. We'll talk tonight." That phrase triggered a memory. Dinner at Evelyn's 2 months ago, her innocent questions about why I hadn't added Aaron's name to the condo, her cold stare when I said it was my inheritance. Her dramatic sighs about family fairness, the warning squeeze under the table from Aaron. Every bit of it was about control. Ownership. They'd been planning this long before $50 million entered the picture. My phone buzzed again, this time from the lottery office, confirming earlier instructions. "Don't tell anyone. Sign nothing. Protect yourself." For the first time in years, I listened. I started another list. What they think. They think I don't know. They think I'll sign anything. They think I'm desperate. They think I'm alone. Then beneath it, what I'll do. Contact a lawyer. Ask about staying anonymous. Pretend I didn't win yet. Watch. Listen. Collect everything. Writing it made my hands stop shaking. When the lottery office representative explained privacy options, I answered carefully, avoiding anything that might alert Aaron too soon. After the call, I felt a quiet strength build inside me. A shift. The door opened around 6. Aaron came in wearing that tired, hard-working expression he perfected for sympathy. He bent to kiss my cheek, but I moved just enough that he caught only the edge of my skin. I smelled her perfume on him. "How was your day?" he asked casually as he removed his jacket. "Interesting," I answered, watching him closely. When Micah innocently whispered, "We saw Daddy at office," I saw panic flash across Aaron's face before he covered it. "You came by?" he asked too quickly. "Yeah," I said calmly. "The receptionist said you were busy." He swallowed. Lied. Adjusted. And then pretended to relax. When he asked what was so urgent earlier, I gave him the calmest lie of my life. "The lottery office called. There's a delay. Paperwork. Could be weeks. Maybe months." His shoulders loosened. Relief washed over his face. He thought he still had time to manipulate me, to prepare, to trap me. And he didn't notice the way my eyes had changed. The way my voice no longer shook. "Well," he said slowly, "then we should talk about how to handle everything when it comes through. For the family." I smiled at him, a smile he didn't recognize. A smile that held no fear, no dependence, no naive trust. "Yes," I said softly. "We definitely should." Because if he wanted to play dirty with paperwork and secrets, he was about to discover what happened when the convenient wife stopped being blind and started playing chess. The days that followed felt like living underwater, where everything looked normal on the surface, but the pressure around me kept building quietly, slowly, until even breathing required concentration. I moved through the condo like nothing had changed, cooking dinner, folding laundry, kissing Micah goodnight, while every moment replayed the words I had heard through that office door. Aaron thought I was stupid. He thought I was temporary. And most of all, he thought he was safe. I let him believe all of it. When he kissed my cheek in the mornings and rushed out of the house with big meetings, I smiled and nodded, then watched the door close behind him and felt a cold, steady determination replacing the fear that had lived inside me for years. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to scream or cry or ask him who she was. I was going to listen, watch, and learn how deep the betrayal went. On the 3rd morning after the office incident, he left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while rushing to help his mother with some legal papers she needed printed. He kissed Micah's head and mumbled something about being home for dinner. When the door shut, I just stood there staring at the laptop. I'd never snooped before. I'd always believed privacy meant respect. But privacy meant something different now. I walked toward the counter with slow steps like I was approaching a wild animal. My hands trembled as I touched the trackpad, watching the screen wake up without a password. A small part of me laughed bitterly. He thought I'd never check. And maybe the old version of me never would have. But that woman didn't exist anymore. His email was open. The subject line of the top message hit me like a punch. Tonight? The sender's name, Brianna C. The kind of name that sounds like long lashes and expensive perfume. I clicked, my heart pounding so hard I felt it in my fingertips. Her message was short. Can't stop thinking about you. Your wife will still be out at the clinic? Let me know. The timestamp was from last week, but his reply was newer. She's always out. You're safe. I stared at the words until they blurred together. Safe. As if I were some storm he needed to avoid while he built a second life behind my back. I scrolled and found dozens of messages, plans to meet at hotels at his office, jokes about me, private photos I didn't want to see, things that burned into my brain so painfully I had to force myself not to slam the laptop shut. And between all that filth, the messages that made my blood run cold. Conversations about the lottery. From the moment he overheard me talking about buying a ticket, he'd been strategizing. He wrote about liquidating assets and fast-tracking paperwork and pushing her to sign documents, so everything feels normal. The worst part wasn't the cheating, it was realizing how long they had been building a plan to erase me from my own life the second I became valuable. I took pictures of everything. Every email. Every message. Every file. My hands steadied as I worked because taking screenshots felt like building armor brick by brick. Then I went into his downloads folder and found something even worse. 3 PDF documents labeled post-lottery plan, templates for trusts, transfer forms, and joint accounts, all written in legal language, so complicated I couldn't understand half of it, but I didn't need to. The portions highlighted in yellow made the intention clear. Clauses that gave him complete controlling interest over every cent, sections that limited my financial rights, parts that mentioned mental competency evaluations in the event of emotional instability, all structured so that if things ever went to court, I would look like an incapable spouse who needed oversight. It wasn't just betrayal. It was entrapment. A trap he and his mother had been preparing for months. As I scrolled, the apartment felt smaller, like the walls were closing in, like the air itself was heavy with secrets. I heard Micah humming from the living room, pushing his toy cars along the carpet, and a wave of grief washed over me so forcibly my knees buckled. I sank into the kitchen chair, pressing my forehead to the table, breathing slowly as I told myself, not now. Cry later. Think now. I wiped my eyes and kept going. I moved from his laptop to his desk drawers, to the coat pockets in the closet, to the filing cabinet where he kept bills. I wasn't searching for anger anymore. I was searching for evidence. Proof. Anything that tied the threads together. Because if Aaron and his mother were willing to steal my home, my assets, my stability, and even my son's future, then I needed to know exactly what I was up against. In the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet, under old utility bills, I found a thin folder labeled Future. Inside were printed emails between Aaron and a financial advisor I'd never heard of, discussing how to transition marital assets smoothly after major changes and ensure wife cooperation through legal supervision. They had dates, signatures, plans. 2 weeks from now, he had an appointment scheduled with this advisor. Without me. My hands shook as I read line after line, seeing my life reduced to a series of strategic moves for him, a game he fully expected to win while I smiled beside him like a clueless accessory. I placed the documents back exactly as they were and sat on the floor beside the open drawer, letting everything settle. The apartment was quiet except for the faint sound of cartoons playing. I realized then that if I confronted him even once, if my voice wavered, if I slipped, if he sensed even a hint of awareness, he would change tactics. He would hide things better. He would lock his laptop. He would move money faster. He would become dangerous in a way that wouldn't just hurt me, it could take Micah away from me. For the first time, The fear wasn't about heartbreak or losing my marriage. It was about survival. Financial survival. Emotional survival. Physical survival. And protecting my son from the fallout of a man who saw him as a pawn, not a child. I took a deep breath and crawled back into the present moment, my mind racing but sharp. I needed information about the mistress, too. I sat at Erin's laptop again and typed her name into social media. She appeared instantly. A woman in her late 20s with perfect hair, meticulous makeup, and a smile that seemed carved from entitlement. Her profile was mostly private, but her comments and tagged photos weren't. Pictures with coworkers at Erin's company. A beach selfie 2 months ago with a caption, "With a man who sees the real me." A comment underneath from Erin, using a burner account he didn't think anyone would notice. Always. The pieces clicked together painfully, like shards of glass forming a complete picture. She wasn't a random woman. She worked with him. She worked near him. She was part of his daily life, the world he never let me into. I found videos of office parties, candid photos where Erin's hand lingered too long on her back, where they stood too close. And then the final confirmation, a picture of her at the same hotel Erin had taken me to on our anniversary last year, except the date was 3 weeks ago. The same room, the same balcony, the same spot where he told me, "I'm trying, Kendra. I want us to be better." I snapped back into my body with a jolt of fury, so clean it almost felt like relief. I saved everything, screenshots, photos, timestamps. I organized them neatly into a folder on my phone labeled tax documents, something Erin would never click. Then I sat in silence, staring at the wall, absorbing the truth. I wasn't dealing with a cheating husband. I was dealing with a man building a future without me while using my life, my money, and my trust as the scaffolding to build it. That night when Erin came home, smelling like expensive cologne and someone else's perfume, he kissed my cheek and asked, "What's for dinner?" as if the entire framework of our marriage wasn't rotting beneath us. I looked at him, and for the first time, I did not see my husband. I saw a problem to solve. An opponent. A danger wrapped in a smile. And he had no idea that while he'd been planning my downfall, I had begun preparing his. The next morning I woke up before my alarm, staring at the ceiling in the dim gray light, listening to Erin's even breathing beside me. It was strange, watching him sleep peacefully while my entire body felt wired with the kind of alertness you get during a storm. His arm was draped lightly across my waist, a gesture that might once have comforted me, but now felt like a trap disguised as affection. I moved slowly, gently lifting his arm away so he wouldn't stir, and slid out of bed. I stood there for a moment, watching him, thinking how surreal it was that the man lying inches away from me was planning my financial execution behind closed doors. He looked harmless, soft even, his hair messy, his face relaxed, his breathing steady. But now I knew better than to confuse softness with safety. I walked to the kitchen, making sure to close the bedroom door quietly, and brewed a pot of coffee, even though my stomach twisted with anxiety at the smell. I poured myself a cup anyway, holding the mug between both hands like it could anchor me to the ground. The morning felt heavy with decisions. I had gathered evidence. I had seen the mistress. I had read the emails and documents, but information without action wouldn't save me. Not from Erin, not from Evelyn, not from the plan they'd been weaving around me like a spiderweb. I needed help. Real help. Professional help. Not the kind of help you get from crying to your mom or venting to a friend. I needed someone who could build a fortress around me before they moved in for the kill. I put Micah's breakfast in front of him. Toast, berries, his favorite cup of warm milk, and sat at the table with my laptop, pretending to scroll through recipes while my heart pounded so loudly I worried he could hear it. When Erin finally emerged from the bedroom, he kissed the top of my head like he always did, as if we were still a regular married couple, as if he wasn't quietly planning to bury me under paperwork and lies. I smiled up at him, sweetly, innocently, and he didn't notice the slight tremor in my hands or the way I avoided his eyes. He sat down, ate the breakfast I made for him, and asked casually if I could organize a few papers for him later, No doubt another step in his plan, but I nodded with practiced obedience, making mental notes of every word and every expression. The moment he left for work, I closed the condo door, locked it, checked the peephole twice, then rushed to my bedroom and grabbed my phone. I searched, fingers flying, for lawyers specializing in financial protection, trusts, marital asset security, and lottery winners. I didn't care about cost. I wasn't thinking about budgets. I was thinking about survival. After 10 minutes, I found a woman named Attorney Marlene Hart, someone with stellar reviews from clients who used phrases like a shark in heels, saved my life, protected everything I had, brilliant strategist, and gets it done quietly. That was exactly what I needed, quiet brilliance. The opposite of Aaron and his mother's smug arrogance. I dialed her number, my hand shaking slightly as the phone rang. Hart and Associates, how may I help you? A crisp voice answered. I swallowed hard before speaking. I need to speak with Attorney Hart, I said, trying to sound composed. It's urgent. It's about marital financial protection. There's a pause on the line, then the receptionist said, let me check her availability. I stood there by the window, staring out at the parking lot, chewing my lip until I tasted blood. When the receptionist came back, she said, she has an opening in an hour. Can you come in? My breath caught. Yes, I said immediately. I'll be there. I dressed quickly, packed Micah's small bag, grabbed all the evidence I'd collected, screenshots, photos, copies of emails, that awful post-lottery plan document, and drove to the office downtown. The building was modern and quiet, with glass doors and sleek furniture that made me feel like I was stepping into the place where powerful people made powerful decisions. For the first time in days, I didn't feel small walking through those doors. I felt like a woman stepping into her own fight. When Attorney Hart walked into the conference room, she looked exactly like someone you wouldn't want to mess with. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, sharp presence. She introduced herself, shook my hand firmly, and asked me to start from the beginning. I told her everything. Not dramatically, not emotionally, just clearly, step by step. I told her about the lottery win, the voices through the office door, the emails, the mistress, Evelyn's pressure about the condo, the fraudulent paperwork, the documents Aaron had printed without my knowledge, and the upcoming appointment he had scheduled without me. I expected her to interrupt, question, or show some exaggerated sympathy. Instead, she listened without blinking, taking notes rapidly, her expression unreadable but focused. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, tapped her pen on the table twice, and said, okay. First things first, you're not crazy. Second, you're not overreacting. Third, your husband is in deep, very deep, legal danger, and he doesn't even realize it yet. I stared at her, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. So, what do I do? She smiled, not a warm smile, but a confident, calculating one. You're going to protect yourself. Quietly. And then when the time is right, we'll turn the entire situation around. She explained that lottery winners often get targeted by spouses, family, even strangers, and that the most dangerous time was the period between winning and claiming. She recommended forming a trust in my name only, one that gave no legal access to Aaron or his family. She would file paperwork that ensured the condo stayed in my name, protected from marital claims. She would also legally record all the cheating evidence and financial manipulation for future use. And most importantly, she told me to act normal. Let him think he's winning, she said. People planning to steal think they're smarter than everyone else. When they think you're clueless, they talk too much and hide too little. That's exactly what we want. Her words hit me like a surge of strength I didn't know I had been craving. For the first time, I felt like someone was on my side. Someone who understood the stakes. Someone who wasn't afraid of Aaron or his mother. Someone who saw me not as a doormat or a fool, but as a woman worth protecting. I signed the papers she handed me, officially creating a trust that locked the lottery money away where no one could touch it but me. She told me to keep the trust secret for now. Your husband will ask questions, she warned. He will try to push documents at you. He will try to corner you emotionally. Do not sign a single thing without sending it to me first. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "And your evidence," she said, pointing to the folder I brought, "is gold." His affair, the emails, the financial documents, they paint a picture of a man planning premeditated financial abuse. Judges do not look kindly on that. When we reveal this, it will not be subtle. It will be decisive. When I left her office, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. Not loud power. Not the kind that screams and fights and throws accusations. This was quiet power. Strategic power. The kind that hides in plain sight until the moment it strikes. As I buckled Micah back into his seat, he looked up at me with his innocent brown eyes and said, "Mama happy?" I smiled and brushed his curls away from his forehead. "Yeah, baby," I whispered. "Mama's finally getting there." Every slip mattered. This was evidence. Proof of manipulation. Proof they were creating pressure to force signatures. When I sent the summary to Attorney Hart, she replied, "Excellent. She's overconfident. Use that." Overconfident. Just like Aaron. They underestimated me so deeply it would almost be funny if it weren't so heartbreaking. That night, I decided to feed the trap even more. Over dinner, I pretended to worry aloud. "They said the money might clear soon," I murmured, tracing circles on the table. I hope we're doing the right thing. Maybe we should wait before making big decisions." Aaron looked up sharply. "Wait for what?" I shrugged timidly. "I don't know. It's a lot of money. I don't want to mess anything up." He leaned forward, adopting a gentle tone that might have fooled the old me. "Kendra, sweetheart, I'm here to guide you. You don't need to stress. Just trust me." I looked down at my hands, pretending to be nervous. "Maybe you could explain those papers again?" I didn't understand everything. He hid his frustration poorly. "There's nothing to understand. Just sign the one I gave you." I bit my lip. "Maybe tomorrow," I whispered. His jaw clenched. "Perfect." He went to bed irritated, tossing and turning. He thought he was frustrated because I didn't sign the paper. But he had no idea he was frustrated because I finally understood him. Because the woman he thought was obedient and naive was quietly collecting every lie he told, every trick he used, every pressure he applied. He was digging his own grave without realizing the shovel was in my hands. The next morning, he left the house early and didn't say goodbye. I watched from the window as he typed furiously on his phone before speeding away. I wondered if he was texting her. I wondered if he was venting about me, how difficult I was being, how confused, how emotional. Let him. Every lie he told himself made him weaker. Every lie he told her made him reckless. He was slipping faster now. His greed was louder than his caution. That evening, after Micah was asleep and I was folding laundry, Aaron came to me with a forced smile and said, "Let's have dinner with Mom tomorrow." My hands paused over a towel. Evelyn never invited me to dinner, unless she wanted something. "Sure," I said softly. "What's the occasion?" His smile tightened. "Just family time," which meant there would be documents. Pressure. Manipulation. Good. Let them all gather. Let them all talk. Let them all underestimate the quiet girl sitting at the table. The girl they thought was foolish, fragile, and easy to corner. Because they didn't know that in my phone, in my drawer, in my lawyer's secure drive, was everything. Emails. Messages. Financial documents. Plans. Evidence of an affair. Proof of fraud. Recordings of lies. Screenshots of betrayal. Enough to ruin Aaron's life 15 times over. Let them bring the paperwork. Let them bring the manipulation. Let them bring the pressure. All they were doing now was tightening the noose they built for me, without realizing it was already wrapped around their own necks. And tomorrow, at that dinner table, I was going to pull out the chair, sit down politely, and let them dig themselves even deeper. Dinner at Evelyn's house always felt like stepping into a museum full of expensive things I wasn't allowed to touch. Everything was too polished, too cold, too perfectly arranged to feel like a home. That night, the air felt heavier than usual, as if the walls themselves knew something was coming. I held Micah's hand as we walked up the front steps, my stomach strangely calm despite the way my heart thudded slowly, steadily, like a warning drum. Aaron walked ahead of us, not bothering to look back, his posture stiff, his mouth pulled into a tight line. He was tense, nervous. He wasn't hiding it well anymore. Maybe he thought I wouldn't notice. Maybe he still believed he was the only one in control. Evelyn opened the door before we knocked, her face stretched into a smile so forced it almost cracked. "There you are," she said, her eyes scanning me the way a hunter sizes up prey to see how easy the kill will be. Her gaze slid down to Micah and softened only slightly. "Go play in the living room, darling," she said sweetly to him. Micah ran off, his dinosaur in hand, oblivious to the poison swirling in the room. I walked inside and immediately felt the trap closing. The table was already set. Not for a casual dinner, but for a meeting, a confrontation, a ceremony. Something important in their minds, something they believed would change everything. I swallowed the bitter laugh rising in my throat as I took a seat where Evelyn gestured, directly across from her, with Aaron beside me, as if they were a team presenting something to me. And oh, they were. Just not what they thought. The moment I sat down, Evelyn placed a folder on the table. A thick one. Too thick to be something harmless. She folded her hands on top of it and smiled with false warmth. "Kendra, dear," she began, her voice dripping with manufactured sincerity, "we're all excited about the future. And we want to make sure everything is handled properly. For the family." Aaron nodded beside me, his knee bouncing slightly under the table. He was anxious.
"Good.
"So," she continued, pushing the folder closer to me, "we've prepared a few documents that will help us move forward smoothly once the lot—" I stared at the folder, but didn't touch it. "Documents?" I asked lightly, my tone soft, a little confused. "For what?" Evelyn exchanged a quick glance with Aaron, the kind of glance people share when they think they're about to manipulate someone successfully. "Nothing complicated," she said. "Just standard things. Combining assets. Granting financial authority. Protecting the family home. Things a responsible wife would take care of." The insult was subtle but sharp enough to draw blood if I weren't already numb to her poison. Aaron cleared his throat, leaning forward. "It's simple, Kendra. Sign here." He tapped the first page, "and it'll help us avoid tax complications when the money comes in." I tilted my head slightly, pretending to struggle with the concept. "I thought the lottery office handled taxes," I murmured. Aaron forced a smile. "They handle some, but not everything. This is better for logistics." I could hear the lie wobbling in his voice. Logistics. The word he always used when he didn't want me to understand something. I let the silence stretch for a moment, my eyes drifting toward the kitchen where Micah's giggles floated through the air as he played. For a split second, grief stabbed me, grief that my son was growing up in a family built on these kinds of lies. Then I pushed it down. This wasn't the moment for emotion. This was the moment for watching them reveal exactly who they were. I finally reached toward the folder, but instead of opening it, I placed my hand gently over it and looked up at Evelyn. "You know," I said softly, "I'd really like to understand everything before I sign anything. You two are so much better with money than I am. Maybe you could explain it to me." Evelyn's smile faltered. "Kendra," she said, her tone tightening, "it's not complicated. You don't need to understand every detail. Just trust your husband. He knows what he's doing." That was the first slip. The pressure. The guilt. The manipulation. She pushed too hard. Too fast. I kept my voice delicate, almost apologetic. "But what if I misunderstand something? I wouldn't want to mess anything up. It's a lot of money. Maybe I should have someone look at these papers?" Aaron's chair creaked as he leaned forward sharply. "Someone?
Who?"
I shrugged, playing the clueless role perfectly. "I don't know, a lawyer, maybe?" Evelyn nearly slammed her hand on the table. "A lawyer?" she hissed. "Why in the world would you need a lawyer?" I blinked innocently. "To explain things?" "There is nothing to explain," she snapped, her polished facade cracking open as frustration spilled out. "You sign the papers, the money becomes secure, and we all move forward. This isn't a negotiation." I felt a quiet thrill pulse through me. She'd lost her temper. She'd shown her hand. They were desperate. Aaron shot his mother a silent warning look, then turned back to me with a softer tone. Baby, listen. I'm doing this for us. For our future. Don't complicate things. He reached out to touch my hand. I let him, even though every part of me wanted to pull away. We just need this done, he said gently. The sooner you sign, the easier everything will be. I stared at our hands, then slowly, deliberately, I pulled mine back. His face stiffened. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly, sensing the shift in the air. Maybe, I said quietly, we should just go through the documents together.
Right now.
You can explain each page. Aaron's throat bobbed as he swallowed. Well, we don't need to read every page. It's boring stuff. I want to understand. I insisted gently, still calm, still soft. Please. For me. Evelyn exhaled sharply, annoyed. Fine, she snapped, opening the folder. But it's unnecessary. You're making this harder than it needs to be. She flipped to the first document and began explaining, poorly, vaguely, nervously, her voice growing more irritated as I asked question after question. What does this part mean? I asked sweetly. Why does this say sole financial authority for Aaron? Why does this part remove my right to dispute decisions? Why does this say joint ownership of the condo? And this, and this, and this. With each question, Evelyn's voice grew sharper. Aaron's foot tapped faster under the table. They were unraveling, losing composure, losing control, and all I had done was ask for clarity. Finally, Evelyn snapped, because this is how marriages work. You trust your husband and you don't act like some suspicious. She cut herself off, but the word hung in the air. Suspicious. As if wanting to understand my own financial fate was an act of betrayal. I let her words settle before lifting my eyes to hers. Something cold and steady sparked inside me. So, I said softly, you want me to hand over everything and trust that you and Aaron will take care of it? Evelyn tightened her jaw.
Yes.
That is what responsible wives do. I nodded slowly. I reached for the pen lying beside the folder. Aaron's entire body stilled. Evelyn sat up straighter. The room felt suspended in time as I lifted the pen between my fingers, then set it down gently on the table and closed the folder calmly. I'm not signing anything today. Evelyn's mouth fell open. Excuse me? I want my lawyer to look at this first, I said, my voice calm but unshakable, every word deliberate. You're what? She screeched. Lawyer, I repeated quietly, just to make sure everything is fair. Aaron leaned forward, his voice low and angry.
Kendra.
We talked about this. I shook my head.
No.
You talked. I listened. Now I have questions. And until I get answers, I'm not signing a thing. The silence that followed felt like a bomb ticking. Evelyn stared at me with such venom, I wondered how I had ever mistaken her coldness for concern. Aaron opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Who put this idea in your head? I looked at him, really looked at him, and said softly, no one had to. Something flickered in his eyes, panic, irritation, confusion. He wasn't used to this version of me, and he didn't know whether to push harder or pull back. Evelyn stood abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. This is unacceptable, she snapped. We are trying to help you, and you are behaving like an ungrateful little. Enough, Aaron barked at her, surprising both of us. He rubbed his forehead and exhaled. Fine. Have your lawyer look at it. But don't drag this out, Kendra. We don't have time to waste. I smiled softly and gathered my things. I won't drag anything out, I said gently. Trust me. Their expressions twisted at the same time, confusion mixed with something else. Because for the first time in this entire marriage, I wasn't confused. I wasn't overwhelmed. I wasn't intimidated. I was calm. Clear. Controlled. And they didn't know what to do with that. As I picked Mike up from the living room and headed toward the door, I could feel their eyes burning into my back. The hunter and her wounded son watching the prey walk away, only now realizing the prey wasn't running. She was walking. Steady. Deliberate. Dangerous. Driving home, I felt the beginning of something powerful rising inside me. A shift. A turning of the tide. Because tonight wasn't the showdown. Tonight wasn't the destruction. Tonight wasn't the reveal. Tonight was just the moment they realized I wasn't theirs to manipulate anymore. The real storm, the one they never saw coming, was still building silently behind me. And the next time we were all in a room together, they wouldn't be asking me to sign anything. They would be begging for forgiveness. The day everything finally unraveled didn't arrive with thunder or warning. It came quietly, almost gently, the way a storm sometimes appears after an eerily calm morning. I woke up that day feeling strangely light, like a weight had shifted somewhere inside me. Not lifted, just moved. Aaron was already gone, leaving behind the faint smell of cologne and the stale discomfort of a marriage that had become a performance. I got Micah ready, packed his little blue backpack, and dropped him off at daycare with an extra long hug, breathing in his innocence like it was the only pure thing in my life. I didn't know exactly how the day would end, but I knew it wouldn't end the same way it began. My lawyer had called the night before with a tone so focused it made my skin prickle. "Come to my office tomorrow," she had said. "Bring everything. We're ready." Those words had echoed in my mind all night. We're ready. It sounded like armor clicking into place. When I arrived at the law office, the air was buzzing with a current I could feel in my bones. Attorney Hart met me in the hallway, walking briskly in heels that clicked like a countdown. "They took the bait," she said without preamble. "Your husband contacted the financial advisor again this morning. They think they're finalizing the transfer. The trustee team is in place. The investigator is here." And she paused, giving me a knowing look. "We invited them." My breath hitched. "Them meaning?" "Your husband and his mother," she confirmed. "They think this meeting is about signing the lottery assets into the family structure. They think you'll be outnumbered and intimidated." She smirked. "Good. Let them think that." We stepped into the conference room, and for a moment I just stood there. The long table gleamed under the lights, folders neatly stacked, water glasses filled, chairs arranged with a precision that made my pulse quicken. Two of Attorney Hart's partners sat on one side. A woman from the Lottery Commission, calm, observant, holding a sealed envelope, sat near the end. A quiet man with a briefcase introduced himself as a representative of the Financial Investigations Unit. And at the far side of the room, a chair was left empty, directly across from mine. Aaron's chair. The air felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. 10 minutes later, the door opened and in walked Aaron, followed closely by Evelyn. They looked surprised to see so many people, but not enough to worry. They still thought they were the powerful ones. Evelyn's eyes narrowed when she saw me, sitting tall, composed, not the trembling woman she expected. She plastered on a fake smile. "Oh, you're early," she said. "How responsible of you." Aaron sat down, glancing around the room with a mixture of confidence and mild confusion. "So," he said, clearing his throat, "let's get started. We're here to finalize the transfer of the lottery winnings into the Miller family assets." His arrogance would have crushed the old me. Now it just confirmed that everything my lawyer had predicted was true. Attorney Hart folded her hands. "Before we discuss anything," she said smoothly, "I want to clarify the legal structure of the lottery claim. As of this morning, the winnings have been fully processed and allocated into a protected trust." Aaron's head snapped toward me. "What?" he said sharply. "You didn't tell me that." I kept my voice calm, almost gentle. "You never asked." His jaw tightened. "We agreed." "No," I said quietly. "You talked. I listened." "That's not an agreement." The investigator opened his briefcase with a soft click. "We've also been reviewing several financial documents submitted by Mr. Miller and Ms. Evelyn Miller in preparation for this meeting." Evelyn stiffened. "Why would you be reviewing our documents?" The investigator raised an eyebrow. "Because some of them are fraudulent." Silence exploded into the room like a shockwave. Aaron jerked upright in his chair. "What the hell is this?" he spat. "Who are you?" The investigator remained unbothered as he slid copies of the documents onto the table. These forms attempt to transfer control of your wife's assets to you without her informed consent. That is financial coercion and attempted fraud. Evelyn's face drained of color. This is ridiculous, she snapped. We were helping her. She doesn't understand money. I finally turned to her, and the calmness in my voice sliced through her excuses. I understand perfectly, I said. Enough to see what you were trying to do. She opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. Let me finish. My lawyer nodded at me, and that small gesture gave me the strength to speak. My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. For once, emotion didn't choke me. It fueled me. For months, you two have been planning behind my back, pressuring me to sign documents, trying to put Aaron's name on my condo, trying to secure my lottery winnings for yourselves, all while mocking me behind closed doors and telling each other how stupid and convenient I am. Aaron flinched. Evelyn looked at him sharply.
She's lying, she snapped.
She must have misunderstood. I heard you, I said, my eyes locking onto Aaron's. Through your office door. The day I won. His face turned white. You were there? Yes, I whispered. I heard everything. The lottery official slid a folder toward the center of the table. We also have reason to believe Mr. Miller attempted to acquire full claim over the winnings using misleading information. Evelyn hissed, This is a setup. Actually, Attorney Hart cut in sharply. This is evidence. She began placing printouts, emails, screenshots, and signed drafts onto the table one by one. Every document I had collected, every piece of proof, every betrayal made visible. The room filled with the sound of paper landing in front of Aaron like a series of blows. His affair emails, his financial plans, his burned traces of manipulation, even the hotel receipts. Evelyn's breath hitched. Aaron, what is all this? He stammered. Mom, it's not. She's twisting things I didn't. His panic was raw, real, ugly. And then the final blow landed. Attorney Hart pressed play on her phone. Aaron's voice filled the room, clear, cruel, unmistakable. She'll sign whatever I give her.
Trust me.
She's convenient. And once the money clears, she's gone. Evelyn covered her mouth in horror. The investigator's eyebrows lifted slightly. The lottery official closed her eyes, disgusted. Aaron lunged across the table. Turn that off. You can't use that, you sneaky little. Sit down, the investigator ordered sharply. Unless you'd like to add intimidation to your list of charges. Aaron froze. Charges. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Finally, Aaron sank back into his chair, his face collapsing into an expression I had never seen before. Not anger. Not arrogance. Something smaller. Something weaker. The realization that the game was over. I spoke softly, and everyone heard me. You planned to take everything from me. You planned to leave me with nothing. You used me, lied to me, betrayed me, and humiliated me. But the mistake you made wasn't cheating or even stealing. I leaned forward slightly, my voice steady as steel. Your mistake was thinking I wouldn't fight back. Aaron's mouth opened, but no words came out. Evelyn looked like she might crumble onto the floor. The investigator calmly gathered the evidence. Mr. Miller, he said, you will be facing charges for attempted financial fraud, coercion, and document manipulation. You are also under investigation for tax evasion tied to these accounts. Aaron's breath came in shallow bursts. You can't do this. Kendra, please. I'm not doing anything to you, I said quietly. You did all of this to yourself. The door opened and two officers walked in. Real ones. Not imaginary. Not symbolic.
Real.
Aaron's eyes widened. No, he whispered. No, this isn't happening. But it was. They approached him, stating his rights calmly as they placed handcuffs around his wrists. Evelyn burst into tears, reaching for him, but he pulled away, shame burning on his face. And I just sat there, watching it all without blinking. Because for the first time in years, the collapse happening in front of me wasn't mine. It was his. And I felt nothing but quiet, clean freedom. As they led him out of the room, he turned back toward me, eyes pleading, broken, stunned. "Kendra, please don't do this." I let one single sentence fall from my lips. "I didn't." "You did." And then he was gone. In the weeks after Aaron was taken away in handcuffs, life didn't immediately snap into some bright, victorious fairy tale. Real freedom doesn't arrive like fireworks. It arrives in small, quiet moments. The first morning after the chaos, I woke up in a silent condo, sunlight stretching across the floor, and realized there was no tension running through my chest, no dread curling in my stomach at the sound of footsteps, no tightness in my throat waiting for the next argument, the next manipulation, the next lie disguised as concern. It was just me and Micah, breathing in a home that finally felt like ours. I didn't realize how tightly I had been holding myself together for years until I felt what it was like to finally let go. People always imagine the aftermath of betrayal as triumphant or glamorous, but the truth is more tender. I spent days simply resting. Just resting. Not walking on eggshells, not rehearsing conversations in my head to avoid fights, not shrinking myself to keep someone else calm. I cooked meals that tasted like comfort instead of apology. I played with Micah on the living room floor without checking the clock or worrying whether Aaron would walk in with cynicism in his eyes and perfume on his shirt. I took showers that felt like washing off years of being small. I slept with the entire bed to myself and woke up without fear of unfamiliar voices behind closed doors. The legal process moved quickly. With the recordings, the emails, the documents, and the investigator's testimony, the case against Aaron was nearly airtight. He pled guilty after a few weeks, likely to avoid a harsher sentence. His lawyer tried to argue for leniency, claimed he was emotionally overwhelmed, confused, misguided. But the judge wasn't swayed. "You were not confused when you conspired to steal," she said. "You were not overwhelmed when you mocked your wife's intelligence. And you were not misguided when you tried to manipulate legal documents for personal gain." Hearing someone in power say the truth out loud was like watching the final crack appear in a wall I had spent years leaning against. Evelyn tried calling me twice. The first time, she left a voicemail pretending to cry, telling me I had ruined her son's life and torn apart a family. The second time, her voice was cold and sharp, calling me ungrateful, spiteful, and manipulative. I didn't respond to either message. I forwarded both to my lawyer and blocked her number. I realized then how much space Evelyn's voice had taken in my mind over the years, her disapproval, her judgment, her constant insistence that I wasn't enough. When I blocked her, it felt like reclaiming a part of myself I didn't even know I had lost. The trust that Attorney Hart created for me became the foundation of my new life. My lottery winnings were safe, untouchable, and fully mine. Not to flaunt, not to waste, but to build something stable and beautiful for Micah and me. I moved us into a new home. Not a mansion, not a palace, just a warm, sunlit space with a small garden where Micah could play and I could sit with a cup of coffee and remember who I used to be before fear became my companion. I decorated slowly, choosing things that made me smile instead of things that looked appropriate for guests who only came to judge. Micah adjusted quickly. Children are resilient in ways adults often aren't. One evening, as I tucked him into bed, he asked, "Mama, Daddy gone?" The question pierced something tender in me. I brushed his curls gently and said, "Daddy made some choices that weren't safe. But you and I are safe now, and that's what matters." He nodded, sleepy-eyed and trusting. "Safe with you." Those 3 words carried more healing than any apology Aaron could have ever offered. Healing wasn't a straight line. There were nights when I sat alone in the living room, thinking about the woman I had been before all this. The woman who apologized too quickly, who doubted herself, who believed love meant shrinking. I mourned her. I forgave her. And I promised myself I would never go back to being her. My silence used to come from fear. Now it came from strength. A quiet, steady strength that didn't need to scream to be heard. One morning, as I stood in my new kitchen making breakfast, I caught my reflection in the window. I didn't look different in any dramatic way, no makeover, no designer clothes, no sudden transformation. But something in my eyes had changed. There was clarity there. And something stronger, a sense of ownership over my own life. Not the desperate ownership of someone trying to hold on, but the peaceful ownership of someone who finally knows her worth. Months later, standing in that same kitchen, I realized something profound. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Aaron. Not at Evelyn. Not even at myself. Anger had been replaced by something far more powerful, understanding. Understanding that sometimes life breaks you open so you can rebuild differently. Stronger.
Softer.
Wiser. Understanding that betrayal isn't the end of your story. It's the end of the chapter where you kept trusting the wrong people. One evening, after putting Micah to bed, I sat on the porch wrapped in a blanket, watching the sky fade into shades of pink and gold. The air was warm, the world quiet. And in that moment, everything that had happened, the cheating, the lies, the door I stood behind, the papers they tried to make me sign, the courtroom, the handcuffs, felt distant. Like a story I had finally finished reading. I realized I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. If someone were to ask me what I learned from all of this, from the pain, the betrayal, the storm, I would tell them this. Listen to that small voice inside you. The one you silence because you don't want to believe the truth. Trust yourself. Protect yourself. And never, ever let anyone convince you that your intuition is foolish or your heart is weak. You are stronger than you think. You are smarter than they believe. And you deserve a life where you don't have to shrink to make someone else feel big. As I watched the last bit of sunlight disappear, I felt a quiet certainty settle in my chest. I had walked through fire. And I hadn't just survived. I had stepped out carrying my future in my own hands. And this time, no one would ever take it from me again.